What is up, everybody? Subalias here, and welcome back to another quick little how-to video here in Ableton Live. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is the audio effect rack and how we can combine the built-in audio effects here in Ableton and map certain parameters to these knobs known as macros to create custom audio effects. Now, what we're going to start with is this simple little arpeggiated pad that I have made in Serum. And I just put some drums here in the background just to give ourselves a little bit of a rhythmic reference. Now let me go ahead and give you an idea of what that will sound like. Alright, you get the idea. So there we go. So simple little pad here, and that is going to be our source material that we are then going to affect. Now the first thing we need to do is add an audio effect rack to this track. You'll notice that it opens up with this blank little box here. Now what we want to do first is expand the audio effect rack so we can get all of our 8 macro knobs here. Now we're going to make a pretty simple effect. It's going to be more of a proof of concept of just how to use macros, but here we go. So I'm going to start with a reverb. Just going to drop that over here. It's a drop audio effects here. Now within the same chain here, we are going to apply a, let's see, we can do the ping pong delay or simple. I think we're going to go with simple delay. And I'm going to put that before the reverb, so that way the delayed sound will then have reverb applied to it. Now prior to that, I am going to add an auto filter, and then before the filter, I'm going to add a saturator. Now we are going to combine the saturator and auto filter into one effect, into basically one macro, creating one sort of combined effect, and then we're going to combine the delay and the reverb together as well. So there's 2 ways that you can map things. You can either hit the map button and start selecting parameters and then mapping them to the macros, or you can also right-click parameters and then map to macro directly from there. Now what I typically like to do is sort of combine the two, hit map, it opens up this area right here, which we will come back to in a second, and then I can actually just still go through parameters and start to map them. So I'm going to start by right-clicking the drive of the saturator, hitting map to macro 1. I'm going to take the filter cutoff of our filter here, the frequency cutoff of our filter here, and hit map to drive. So now the drive of the saturator and the frequency cutoff of the filter are now mapped to the same knob, and we see that both change together. Now one thing that we need to go ahead and do right off the bat is scale these values, because I don't want the saturator to really go into any negative or like negative dB attenuation. I don't want it to be turning the sound down, so I need to set the minimum at 0. So that means when the knob is all the way to the left, or the macro is all the way to the left, the resting point for the drive of the saturator is going to be 0 dB. Now I also don't want it to go all the way up to 36 dB, or else we will hurt our ears very badly. So what I'm going to do is scale that back to, let's say, like, we'll start with 7 dB, kind of see where we go from there. So if I move the macro, we'll see that the drive of the saturator only travels between 0 and 7 decibels. Now we also want to scale the minimum and maximum of the auto filter, but before I do that, I actually want to switch it to a high pass, then go back to my little mapping area here. I'm going to keep the minimum at 26 Hertz, which is the lowest value for the frequency cutoff, and I'm going to take the maximum and set that to, let's just round off to about 1,000 Hertz. I'm going to get out of map mode. I'm going to turn the reverb and the delay off here. I just want to listen to what this sounds like now. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's move on. So there we go. So I didn't want the maximum of the frequency cutoff to be so high that we completely lose the sound. I just wanted it to be high enough that we lose most of those mids and lower mids, just to kind of thin the sound out a little bit. Now the saturator is then boosting it, so there's not a huge drop in level, and also the saturator kind of colors those higher frequencies a little bit as well. All right, so moving on to the delay and the reverb. This is going to be a relatively simple effect here. I'm going to boost the decay time of the reverb up a little bit to about 3 seconds. Go back into map mode, and I'm going to right-click the dry wet of the delay, map that to, we want to map that to macro 2, so we're going to create a separate macro for these two effects here. And then we're going to right-click dry wet of the reverb and map that to macro 2 as well. So there we go. Now if I adjust the macro here in the audio effect track, now we see that the dry wet of both effects is changing accordingly. I don't want the dry wet to go all the way up to 100% because then we're going to lose the original sound. I can give you an example of sort of like why we don't want that, so I'll play this for you. Just gets lost in the whole wash of reverb and delay. So same deal here. We want to scale these back. So for the simple delay, I'm going to scale that back to 50%, and I'm going to scale the reverb back to 45%. Let's take a listen at what that's going to sound like. Nice. All right, so there we go. So now we can just hit map. I want to rename these because now they're just macro 1 and dry wet. Doesn't really give me a lot of information. So if I select macro 1 and hit Control R or Command R if you're on a Mac, and then I'm going to name this filter. Well, actually, let's say HP filter for high pass filter, and for our other one, delay verb. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to hit play and sort of play around with both macros here to give you an idea of what our final result will sound like. Now what's cool about these macros is we can actually then automate them within a clip in session view or arrangement view. If we pop over to the actual clip editor here and we hit the little E down here in the bottom left, audio effect rack comes up as an option here, and there it is, delay verb. So I can then go into the clip itself and make a nice line of automation here for that macro. So let's take a look and a listen at what that is going to be like. Simple little example of making macros to combine audio effects for more creative results. Thank you for watching, everyone. It is always a pleasure. If you have any ideas for future videos, if you have any questions about this one, please comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to check out some of my original music that I will have down in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be seeing you guys soon.